You ever have a moment where the whole world shifts under your feet, and nothing, not your job, your family, not even your own name, feels solid anymore? Yeah, that happened to me 3 years ago, somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean, 37,000 feet in the air, sipping a lukewarm coffee that tasted like burnt cardboard. I can still smell it when I close my eyes. My name's David Price. I'm 48 years old. I've spent most of my life doing what people said you're supposed to do. Went to college, landed a steady job in corporate sales, bought the house with the 2-car garage, married my college sweetheart, Denise. I used to think we were the lucky ones. 23 years together, and we still finished each other's sentences. Or at least, I thought we did. Funny how you can live inside a story for decades without realizing someone else was writing the ending. I was on a business trip to Dusseldorf, just another week of glad-handing suppliers and sweating through bilingual meetings, when the email came through. No warning. No dramatic phone call. Just a plain, cold subject line. Important update regarding our marriage. I remember seeing it pop up on my phone mid-flight, the little preview text already hitting like a sucker punch. My heart started hammering before I even opened it. The guy next to me, some kid in a hoodie binge-watching superhero movies, glanced over when I let out this weird, involuntary noise, like a wounded animal. I must have looked crazy. Maybe I was. I clicked. I read. And I swear to God, for a full minute, I forgot how to breathe. The email was only 6 sentences long. 6 sentences to burn down 23 years. David, I've decided to file for divorce. I can't keep pretending anymore. By the time you read this, I'll have moved out, taken what's rightfully mine, and closed our joint accounts. Please don't try to contact me. I need space to heal. I hope someday you'll understand. Goodbye. No explanation. No apology. Not even a signature. Just goodbye like it was a note left on the kitchen counter next to an empty coffee mug. At first, I thought it had to be a joke. A prank. Denise loved sarcasm, lived for it, honestly, but this was a whole new level, even for her. I refreshed my inbox again and again, praying for a follow-up email saying, haha, just kidding. Love you. Nothing came. When we first got married, she used to leave little notes tucked in my suitcase when I traveled. Sweet, clumsy things, miss you already. Or don't forget your lucky socks. I'd find them when I unpacked, and it felt like carrying a piece of home with me. Now, I was carrying something else. Something that felt like a knife in my chest. I sat there staring at the screen while the plane hurtled forward through the night, through clouds so thick they looked like bruises. I didn't even feel the turbulence. All I could think was, what does she mean, taking what's rightfully mine? And more importantly, how long had she been planning this? Because you don't just wake up one morning and blow up alive. You plan. You plot. You lie through your teeth until the trap is set. And clearly, I'd walked right into it. The flight home felt like punishment. Every second dragged out like a blade being sharpened. When we finally landed in Columbus, it was raining, that thin, miserable drizzle that soaks you without even trying. I didn't even bother with an umbrella. Just grabbed my suitcase, got into a cab, and gave the driver my address out of habit. The house looked the same from the outside. The blue shutters Denise had insisted on, because everyone else's boring beige, were still hanging slightly crooked. The little maple tree we planted together on our 10th anniversary was already losing its leaves. Normal. Familiar. It felt like walking into a dream I didn't recognize anymore. I half expected to see her car in the driveway. It was gone. The porch light was on, something I used to love about her. She always left it on for me, no matter how late I came home. This time, it felt mocking. Welcome home, sucker. I jammed my key into the lock. It turned, but the door barely opened. Something heavy was braced against it. I pushed harder, squeezing myself through the gap, and stumbled straight into a wall of garbage bags. Dozens of them, stacked chest-high in the front hallway like some grotesque barricade. My shoes crunched on broken picture frames scattered across the floor. Pieces of my life, my memories, shoved into trash bags like they were leftovers nobody wanted. A yellow post-it note was stuck to the inside of the door. It said, "Take what you want. What's left is mine." No signature. Again. It was like she was erasing herself from our life, but not before making sure she spit on every memory first. I staggered deeper into the house, calling her name even though I knew she wasn't there. And that's when I saw the safe, the little fireproof box where we kept all our important papers, sitting wide open in the middle of the living room floor. Empty. Birth certificates, insurance policies, the title to the car, the deed to the house, all gone. Every document that mattered, hers now. And the weirdest thing? On the mantle, next to the empty hooks where our family photos used to hang, she left one thing behind. A single wedding photo, but not ours. It was a picture of her and some man I didn't recognize, laughing, holding hands, a tropical beach behind them. New dress, new ring, new life. I didn't even know his name yet, but I would soon. I stood there dripping rainwater onto the hardwood floor, staring at the photo like it had teeth. At first, my brain refused to process it. I thought maybe it was a prank, some cruel trick to twist the knife a little deeper. Denise had a mean streak, always did, but this felt different. Calculated. Final. I picked up the frame with shaking hands and looked closer. He wasn't a total stranger. The man in the photo was Matt Hanley, my best friend since high school. Best man at our wedding. I actually laughed. A short, broken bark of a laugh that scared even me. Matt, the guy who helped me move Denise into our first apartment. Matt, the guy who cried when he gave his speech at our wedding reception, talking about how true love like theirs doesn't come around twice. Matt, the guy who'd been helping Denise out while I was traveling for work these last couple years. Suddenly, it all clicked. The excuses, the weird tension I used to brush off, the way she stopped asking me about my trips, stopped caring when I left. God, I was such a fool. I dropped the photo. The glass shattered like ice on the floor, but I didn't even flinch. There's a kind of pain so sharp you can't feel it at first, like your soul goes into shock. She hadn't just left me. She had been building a whole new life with someone else, someone I trusted more than almost anyone, while she smiled across the dinner table at me like nothing was wrong. And now? Now, she didn't even have the guts to face me. I don't remember driving to the bank. I just remember standing at the counter, rain still clinging to my jacket, trying to keep my voice steady as I asked the teller to check the status of our accounts. The girl behind the glass, couldn't have been older than my niece, gave me this tight, uncomfortable smile. She tapped a few keys, frowned, tapped a few more. "I'm sorry, Mr. Price," she said finally, voice polite but distant, like she was afraid of setting off a bomb. "It looks like both joint accounts were closed 2 days ago. Funds have been withdrawn." "Withdrawn to where?" I asked, though deep down I already knew. She hesitated, glanced over her shoulder like she needed backup, then lowered her voice. "Wire transfer. Private account. Out of state." "Whose account?" I pressed. She shook her head. "I'm really not authorized." Was the name Denise Price? Another awkward pause. Then a slight, reluctant nod. All of it, every cent we had saved over the years. The money we put away for retirement. The emergency fund we'd started after my dad's cancer scare. The investments we were supposed to cash out to finally take that anniversary trip to Italy. The trip she said she couldn't wait for. Gone. Gone like it had never belonged to me at all. I stumbled out of the bank like a man mugged in broad daylight. Sat in my car with the engine off, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. And that's when I remembered something even worse. The second mortgage. 6 months earlier, Denise had convinced me we should renovate the kitchen, boost the resale value, she said. I'd been reluctant, but she pushed. She always did when she wanted something. She said she'd handle the paperwork. Just sign where I highlight, babe. I trusted her. I didn't even read it carefully. Now, sitting there in that cold parking lot, the memory came back in brutal, HD clarity. The way she rushed me. The way she distracted me with plans for backsplash tiles and new countertops. I wasn't just broke. I was in debt up to my eyeballs. And she was halfway across the country with my best friend and a suitcase full of my money. She hadn't just left me a mess. She had planned every single step of it. The next morning, I called my lawyer, or our lawyer, I should say, Alan McKenzie. He'd handled our wills, our taxes, even helped when Denise's mother passed away. A good man. I figured if anyone could help untangle this mess, it was him. But when I explained everything, he went quiet on the other end of the line. Long, uncomfortable quiet. "David," he said finally, voice thick with pity. I'm not sure how to tell you this." "Tell me what?" He exhaled slowly, like he was about to lower the boom. "Denise came to see me 3 weeks ago. She hired me. I'm representing her now." I blinked. "You can't do that. That's a conflict of interest, isn't it?" "She had me draft a waiver," he said, almost apologetic. "You signed it. Remember the paperwork she asked you to sign when you were in town for that weekend? Right after her surprise anniversary dinner." My stomach dropped. I had signed something half asleep, half drunk after a bottle of Merlot she insisted we finish. She called it a simple tax thing. Said it was just cleaning up old files. I never read it. Just signed where she pointed. Alan cleared his throat. "She filed for divorce that Monday. And the money?" I croaked. "Can I sue?" "Press charges." Another long pause. "Technically," he said, "the money was moved before the divorce papers were filed. She had power of attorney, temporary, but legal. You authorized it." The walls of the room closed in. It wasn't theft. It wasn't fraud. On paper, it was consent. She boxed me in from every angle, turned me into a willing participant in my own destruction. David, I'm sorry, Alan said, sounding like he actually meant it. There's nothing I can do. She was smart about it. Smart. That was the word everyone kept using when they talked about Denise. Smart. Sharp. Charming. No one ever said ruthless. Not until now. I hung up without saying goodbye. For the first time since that terrible email, I realized the full truth. I hadn't just lost my wife. I'd lost the war before I even knew I was fighting one. It took me 3 days to stop walking around the empty house like a ghost. 3 days of opening closets that smelled like her perfume, standing in the kitchen where her laughter used to echo, staring at the dent in the wall from when we tried to hang that stupid pot rack she had to have. It was like living inside a mausoleum. Everything was dead, but nobody had bothered to bury it. I knew I couldn't stay there much longer. Bills were still coming in, and with the second mortgage hanging over my head, foreclosure was just a matter of time. But before I walked away from the ruins of my life, I needed answers. Closure, I told myself. But really, I wanted something uglier. I wanted the truth, even if it gutted me. I started with Matt. His number was disconnected. His Facebook was wiped clean. No posts, no photos, like he'd never existed. Same with Denise. No trace. Mutual friends were tight-lipped or outright hostile. Denise had gotten to them first, spun her web of lies about David's anger problems and how he emotionally abandoned her. There were even rumors I'd cheated on her, a story so laughably untrue I almost admired her creativity. One night, drunk on bitterness and bottom-shelf whiskey, I finally broke down and called Matt's younger brother, Chris. We hadn't spoken in years, but he picked up on the third ring, sounding suspicious and groggy. Chris, it's David, I said, voice raw. I need to know. Please. There was a long, heavy silence. You don't know, Chris said finally, disbelief bleeding through the static. Don't know what? They moved to Florida, he said. Got married last weekend. Key West. Big ceremony, beach wedding, the whole 9 yards. Matt said you gave them your blessing. I nearly dropped the phone. My blessing. I rasped. Yeah, Chris said, sounding uncomfortable. He told everyone you were cool with it. That you and Denise had grown apart years ago, that you'd already moved on. I couldn't speak. My throat locked up. You didn't know? Chris asked again, quieter this time. I hung up without answering. Florida. Married. Living my dream retirement. The one Denise and I used to whisper about on late nights when we couldn't sleep, planning for some golden future that, apparently, only one of us ever believed in. I pictured them walking barefoot down the beach, hand in hand, Denise in some flowing white dress, Matt looking smug and victorious, and everyone clapping. Everyone believing the story they told, the story where I was the bad guy who drove her into another man's arms. For the first time in this whole nightmare, I cried. Not the silent, still a kind of crying you see in movies. Real crying. Ugly, broken, choking sobs that left me doubled over on the floor, gasping for air like I was drowning. Because in a way, I was. I wasn't just grieving a marriage. I was grieving the life I thought I had, the friends I thought I could trust, the very ground I used to stand on. And somewhere in the middle of that hurricane of grief, something inside me hardened. Snapped clean. If they thought I was just going to disappear quietly, they didn't know me at all. I might have been a fool. I might have been blind. But I wasn't dead. Not yet. And if Denise and Matt thought they'd seen the last of David Price, well, they were about to find out just how dangerous a man with nothing left to lose could be. After that night, after the ugly crying, after the whiskey wore off and left me feeling like roadkill, something inside me went cold. Not angry. Not wild. Focused. I realized the worst thing I could do wasn't yelling at them or showing up at their doorstep. The worst thing I could do was rebuild. Without them. Without needing them. Without ever letting them know they broke me. Because that's what they wanted, deep down, Denise especially. She was always the kind of person who needed to win. It wasn't enough for her to leave. She had to leave knowing she'd reduced me to rubble. She wanted me bitter. She wanted me small. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. So I started small. I sold the house, or rather, what was left of it after the second mortgage and the loans she'd secretly stacked against it. I took a loss, but I didn't care. Every wall, every floorboard was soaked in betrayal. Leaving that place behind felt like cutting off a gangrenous limb. I packed what little I had left into a rented storage unit, the kind with a padlock you buy yourself, and couch surfed for a while. Old coworkers, a second cousin who owed me a favor. I learned to live out of a duffel bag. And every night, I made a promise to myself. You will not die like this. You will not be the story they tell. I picked up freelance gigs, consulting jobs, mostly, selling everything I'd learned over 20 years in sales and business to companies who didn't care about my messy divorce. They only cared that I could close a deal, that I could teach their green kids how to read a room without sweating through their suits. For the first time in years, I worked for myself. No wife at home complaining about late dinners. No fake friends pretending to root for me while plotting their next move. Just me. And little by little, the bank account started to grow again. Not fast, not flashy, but steady. I traded in my old SUV, the one Denise always said made me look middle-aged and sad, for a beat-up truck that smelled like cigarettes and oil and freedom. I hit the gym. Hard. Not because I thought I could win Denise back. That ship had sunk and caught fire on the way down, but because I needed to feel strong again. In my body. In my mind. I started eating real food, sleeping real hours, looking in the mirror without flinching. I was becoming someone new. Someone they wouldn't recognize if they passed me on the street. And all the while, I kept quiet. Didn't post about it. Didn't drunk text them. Didn't reach out to mutual friends fishing for scraps of gossip. I let them live in their fantasy world where David Price was a sad, bitter afterthought. It was the hardest thing I ever did. But it was also the most important. Because revenge, real revenge, isn't slashing tires or throwing punches. It's living so well they choke on it. It happened on a raw, gray Wednesday, one of those early spring days where the wind gnaws at you like regret. I was coming out of a little cafe at a strip mall, balancing a coffee in one hand, still riding the buzz of a good client meeting, when I saw her. Not Denise. Not Matt. It was Emily, Denise's younger sister. I froze, halfway through the door, coffee burning my palm. She sat at a corner table, hunched over a laptop, scrolling absently through her phone. Time hadn't touched her much, the same quick, restless movements, the same sharp frown of concentration. Seeing her was like opening a door I had nailed shut. Old memories flooded in, Emily tossing her head back in wild laughter at family cookouts, giving me a hard time over burnt burgers, teasing Denise about her bossiness. She had been part of that life too, a permanent fixture I hadn't realized I'd lost until now. I should have turned and left. I should have spared myself. But something bitter and stubborn rooted me there. I approached her table, unable to stop myself. The moment she looked up and saw me, all the color drained from her face. Shock, sadness, maybe even guilt, washed over her features in waves. It hit me then. Denise hadn't just betrayed me. She had abandoned everyone. The weight of those months crashed down in that silent stare. I saw the answer before Emily ever said a word. She hadn't known. She hadn't been part of the lies. Grief flickered in her expression. Not the sharp, defensive kind, the hollow kind. The kind that said she had lost someone too. I realized that Denise had burned more than a marriage. She had burned her family, her history, even the people who loved her most. Emily slid a small piece of paper toward me, scrawled with her phone number. It was a quiet offering, not a bridge built back, but a piece of driftwood thrown into the ocean between us. An acknowledgement that neither of us had made it through the fire unscathed. She looked as if she wanted to say more, but whatever words hovered on her lips stayed trapped there. She didn't need to say it. I could see it in her eyes. Denise had gotten everything she thought she wanted, the money, the freedom, the new husband, and it hadn't made her happy. She had traded the real and messy for something hollow and shiny, and it was already rotting in her hands. I tucked the number into my pocket and left without a word. There was nothing else to be said. But for the first time since the day that email had shattered my life, I walked away feeling a little less alone. In the days after I saw Emily, something inside me shifted. It wasn't sudden, like a thunderclap. It was slow, like ice thawing after a brutal winter. For so long, I had been trapped in a story I didn't even realize someone else was writing. First Denise's version, then my own griefs. I had worn the role of the betrayed husband like a second skin, letting it define me, letting it bleed into every thought, every breath. But that day in the cafe, sitting across from someone else Denise had thrown away, I understood something. I didn't have to live inside the wreckage anymore. I wasn't going to win by building some perfect life just to rub it in her face. I wasn't going to heal by pretending none of it mattered. There was no erasing what happened, no cleaning it up neatly for some storybook ending. But I could walk forward anyway. I started small. I stopped checking their social media, even the hidden corners where mutual friends still lived. I deleted the fake wedding photo from my phone, the one I had taken from the house that awful night, the one I kept looking at like a bruise I couldn't stop poking. I cut ties with anyone who had fed the drama, anyone who had smiled at me with pity in their eyes. No more postmortems. No more replays. The past wasn't a puzzle I needed to solve anymore. I moved into a small apartment on the edge of the city. Nothing special, just clean walls and a little balcony where I could sit at night, and watched the lights flicker across the skyline. It wasn't the suburban dream Denise and I had built together. It wasn't anything we had ever planned. It was mine. I started picking up new habits, things I had always told myself I didn't have time for. Running at sunrise when the world was still quiet. Volunteering at a weekend workshop teaching kids basic business skills. Learning how to cook real meals instead of reheating leftovers. Every day wasn't easy. Some days I still woke up with a tight knot of anger in my chest, that old ache like a ghost pressing down on my ribs. Some nights I still dreamed about confronting them. Not with shouting, but with the simple, raw question that would never have an answer. Why? But those moments started shrinking, and something else started growing in their place. Pride. Not the brittle, defensive kind. A quieter kind. The kind you feel when you realize you survived the fire. When you realize you can still build something beautiful with the ashes. Somewhere along the way, I stopped thinking about Denise and Matt as people who stole my life. They didn't steal it. They freed me from a life where love had rotted under the surface, where loyalty had become a one-way street, where I had become a shadow of myself just trying to keep the illusion alive. They didn't break me. They revealed me, stripped down, bloodied, but real. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't living for anyone else's approval. Not for a wife who measured love in status and convenience. Not for friends who vanished when the weather turned rough. Just for me. And in that truth, raw, ugly, liberating, I found something I never expected. A beginning. It's strange, looking back now. If you had told me, on that flight home, staring down at that cold, gut punch of an email, that one day I would be grateful for what happened, I would have laughed in your face. Or maybe just broken down right there and wept. But standing here today, in this small apartment with its creaky floors and secondhand furniture, I see it for what it is. A rebirth. The old life was gone, sure. The carefully constructed future Denise and I planned together. The one I thought would carry me into old age with a golden retriever at my feet and grandkids crowding the living room. All of it was nothing but scaffolding around a hollow core. She didn't just betray me. She revealed the rot I had been too blind, too loyal to see. And once the storm passed, once the wreckage was cleared away, what was left behind wasn't emptiness. It was space. Space to rebuild. Space to breathe. I never called Emily, though I kept her number tucked into my wallet for a long time, like a quiet reminder that not all bridges have to be burned. Maybe one day I will. Or maybe some things are better left sacred in memory. Proof that even in the middle of disaster, a little light can survive. I don't think about Denise much anymore. When I do, it's not with anger. It's with a kind of distant pity, the way you might feel for someone who mistook a cheap carnival prize for treasure and spent the rest of their life pretending it was gold. I heard through the grapevine that her and Matt's paradise didn't last long. Another affair. Another scandal. Another house divided by the same lies they once used to justify what they did to me. I don't celebrate it. I don't cheer. It's just noise. Their story is no longer mine to carry. Sometimes at night, when the city is quiet and the weight of the day lifts off my shoulders, I sit out on my tiny balcony and look at the skyline. The way the lights blur against the dark, the way the wind feels clean and new. And I think, this is mine. This life. This bruised, imperfect, hard-won life. It's not the life I would have chosen. It's better, because I chose it with my eyes wide open. Because it's real. Because no one, not Denise, not Matt, not even the version of myself that trusted too easily, can ever take it from me again.